and it's 39 minutes in, have a basic understanding of what the 8-circuit model of intelligence is set up. So 1 is the oral biosurvival, 2 is the anal territorial, 3 is the semantic, 4 is the socio-sexual, right? So meaning oral biosurvival, this is a part of ourselves that, and it's still in you, that has dealt with and remembers the first times of the first imprints toward information itself, toward the world, toward out there versus in here, right? And that's just one fucking gross description of it, right? I could get more detailed on it, but we're moving quick. The second circuit is the emotional territorial. So there's the association with certain emotions in your territory, right? And then when other beings or people step in your territory, what emotions do you take, right? And that's why on the axis, you know, the first circuit runs this way, and the second circuit runs vertical, right? So what Wilson put, you know, the metaphor of top dog, bottom dog. So when people are getting into emotional, territorial clashes, right? Some of the tools that they use are, you know, emotions to get what they want, right? Like, and that's a very interesting, you know, sort of thing to think about. The emotions that arise associated and around, you know, territory. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, I'm getting all these fucking calls right now, man. The fuck. And we'll just leave it at that for right now, right? So that's emotional territorial, right? Top dog, bottom dog. One thing Wilson put as a metaphor is like just observe and analyze what people do when they're saying a fight, right? The emotional disputes. Well, what happens in a fight? You know, someone's going to end up on the ground, and someone's going to be above them. Top dog, bottom dog. You know. A physical confrontation fight, or when people are fighting with words, what do? Oh, you put me down. Oh, you think you're above me, etc., etc. Emotional territorial. That's kind of a really interesting link that Wilson does that. You know, others have spoken about it, but when you're first hearing this, you know, young impressionable minds, you're hearing that relation of like, oh, that's really cool to understand, like how people get emotional around certain territorial aspects of life, you know. And you look at it, I mean, territory and emotion go hand in hand, you know. Get the fuck off, blah blah blah, get away from my this, my shit, my that, you know, etc. You know. The third circuit being the semantic circuit, this essentially being, you know, people's ability to utilize speech, or other creations, you know, maps, right, to describe the world around oneself, right? With the special focus, though, on, you know, the semantic. Well, actually, Wilson, when he's utilizing the word semantic, just like Korzybski, he's not just referring to the written word, right? So your semantic circuit, well, again, I'm going back and forth here because Wilson gets a little fuzzy when he's talking about the semantics, or maybe my understanding of what Wilson's talking about with the semantics is a little fuzzy. So for this off the top lecture, we're going to say that the semantic circuit, and it is actually, sorry, the semantic system, it is written in this book. I'm following the words of this book. Wilson does mean the verbal capacity of people, right? So there's a functioning of anatomy and physiology that's going on when you're utilizing your words. If you're speaking words good, okay. And then the fourth circuit being the socio-sexual, right? So what Leary said or found or whatever was that this is like the moral system. This is where people imprint like morals, where someone is good or someone is bad. So much of this, think about it. When you think about the idea of morals a lot, so many times it involves kids, right? This is like the parent circuit. This is the elder circuit, or approaching the elder, where one starts thinking about perhaps like the tribe, right? But got some yelling out the window. But the what Leary, one thing I haven't added to all this, like and a key part of Leary's and Wilson's, Leary's 8-circuit model is the idea of imprinting, what he called imprinting, and this is for another discussion. But what the idea of imprinting came from this guy named Konrad Lorenz, who studying geese found out that like baby geese would imprint a mother figure, and it didn't even, the mother figure didn't even need to be a goose. They imprinted a mother figure on like the scientists, right? And Lorenz called it imprinting. This Leary took that very new theory, because I think it was Konrad Lorenz, this was the early 70s. Leary took that new theory and he applied the imprinting thing to human psychology. And he said that there are moments of imprinting, which is like, it's like a picture is being taken very quick, like neural nets are being set in our brain, like that are going to stay there, for like structures, like adamantine steel, like where it's going to direct the electricity of our neural flow, for almost the rest of your life. So imprinting is one of those buffering of information, that occurs. Imprinting locks in a neural net, which just immediately, the information will flow, as opposed to just be kind of moving all over the brain. Because I'm assuming the guess is that we needed buffered, constricted fucking neural nets so we could survive, the different threats evolutionarily in our environment, right? So these imprints occur to, not just humans, obviously to animals too. But today, the terminology is not imprinting, right? You don't see that in the discussion of psychology and neuroscience. What it's considered and what it's called, I'm looking for the book, is basically called, critical activation phase or an activation phase. And it's essentially the same thing. They're saying the same thing, that there's a point in the development of the human brain where things set, right? And information just flows through that neural net, mostly for the rest of one's life. What Leary and then Wilson was proposing, but they didn't use this terminology, came later, was a theory of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity in the last 15 years has become a big topic of discussion. It's a huge fucking discovery. Holy shit. Wow, these smart fucking people are saying that the brain can restructure itself and rewire itself, when Leary, who was the ostracized black sheep of the Americans, psychology community, because like of his fucking wild life, he was saying the same thing, that I'm hearing, sorry. He was basically saying that these imprints occur, which again, what's today, it's called the, critical activation phase, and that we could re-imprint our imprints, if you will. And this re-imprinting is a example of neuroplasticity, right? And so if you look at psychology books today, it's basically this thing of imprints is the critical activation phase or the activation phase. And shout out to Mike Gathers, who runs a Robert Anton Wilson fan site, for hipping me to this notion, because he's also writing something about the 8-circuit model of intelligence, Mike Gathers. And he, said that the current terminology, he first hit me to this, was the critical activation phase. And I mean, now you could find it, this textbook right here, The Human Brain, Introduction to the Functional Anatomy I mean, this is like college level fucking neuroscience um, textbook. Talks about the activation phase, right? That's another topic I'm gonna discuss. But what Leary's saying and Wilson's saying, the eighth circuit model of intelligence, the eight system model of intelligence, that each of the four systems or circuits, there's an imprint phase that happens and at different stages of our life. So for the first circuit, we get imprinted like super early on. For the second circuit, we get imprinted when we're kind of like infants and toddlers, trying to walk on our 2 feet. It's all about rising up, that kind of second circuit, the emotional territorial circuit. The third circuit or system, the semantic system, is when we start, gaining a capacity for understanding and processing words and other, abstractions and maps. And then the fourth circuit happens. Imprint occurs around puberty, when we develop, sexual desires, in our teenage years and whatnot. And each of those things, again, there's an imprint that occurs that will determine certain styles, right? Our own kind of unique tweaks on approach to information, approach to language, et cetera, et cetera. And so these are, if anything, the eighth circuit model of intelligence, and Wilson and Leary never, I don't think, claimed that this was the end all and be all understanding of psychology and neuroscience, right? What it did, or at least what it did for me, like so much of Wilson's work, was that it just inspired me to go beyond reading just his fucking take on it and actually go out and fucking read some textbooks. What I mean? Read some fucking textbooks, guys. Read some textbooks. Check this shit out. The immunobiology. That's some ill shit. We're approaching the hour, but I haven't even gotten into the whole thing I was going to talk about, which is the anatomy and physiology of these four circuits now, right? So, because quantum psychology inspired me, it really inspired me to learn about the anatomy and physiology of myself, of the human body mind, right? Like coming up in love and hip hop, there's always the term knowledge of self. You need your knowledge of self. Knowledge of self coming from the 5%ers. That idea of the knowledge of self, right? And then that's come from the Nation of Islam, the way it's used there. Knowledge of self, knowledge of, that's for the black man understanding his place in the world and how they got come up, et cetera, et cetera. Knowledge of self, pulling it back a little bit from that one particular way of breaking it down. And the knowledge of self is understanding yourself, or bringing it back to old philosophical, know thyself. Right. So this is all understandings and knowledge of self studies. So on that, like wanting to know, right? Like what Wilson, I think, is getting out there is saying that we, through understanding more, right, how, like, operationally and physically, right, how these psychological states manifest, right? So you might experience a fair amount of anxiety, social anxiety, right? Well, okay, through the eighth circuit model of intelligence, this could kind of be equated in some ways to the first circuit, right? So how would understanding the anatomy and physiology that Wilson presents of the first circuit help you, right? Well, the simple fact alone of knowledge of self, knowing what your, all your fucking body parts are, right? Knowing your brain and understanding the anatomy of your brain may actually help you in ways that you don't even know, right? Or actually ways that you do know, right? Like, so you can understand, say, oh, I got a pain in my shoulder. Well, what the fuck is a shoulder? Shoulder is a very vague term for actual body parts that are named. Shoulder is your deltoid, and then you got like the different sections of your deltoids, your rear, your this, and your fucking anterior, all that stuff. So if you learn this language system of how the doctors break down the human body and the human brain, perhaps, maybe, perhaps, sometimes, again, I'm not a fucking doctor myself, but if you visualize these aspects of your body mind, sometimes, hey, uh, that might help your life. I'll just say it like that. It might be fun to do, because I'm not trying to say it's gonna fucking heal you of anything, especially right now, because it's proven that fucking science and medicine helps out a lot, right? um, so Wilson in quantum psychology seeks to provide, well, to detail what the first system is comprised of. It's a system, so it's a feedback loop between something. Again, the first circuit is the first system is your oral biosurvival system. So he's saying it's a feedback loop from your mouth to your hypothalamus neuropeptide system through your lymphs and bloods to your immune system. So it's a feedback loop between your mouth, hypothalamus, and your immune system, right? And breaking that down a little bit, because it's fun, right? Like thinking about this: mouth to hypothalamus to immune system, right? That's his whole equation of the child at the teat, right? And but I want to let's define some terms, right? Because this is why I'm on here right now, right? So the hypothalamus, right, is part of this part of your brain called the diencephalon, right? So imagine it right here, right? So there's crazy. You got the brain stem, right? So now we're talking about the diencephalon, which is part of the human brain, right? So the human brain is part of the central nervous system, right? And is broken down into two parts, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is pretty much your brain, and your brain, your fucking all that other shit, your brain, right? And the just want to get the terms correct here in speaking on this. Yeah. So excuse me, the nervous system is broken down into two, subdivided into two things: the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system, right? So and the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, which is, let's see, this cool little thing. I'm sure you already, you got the brain and the spinal cord and then all those nerves, right? That's the central nervous system. And the the brain itself is subdivided into, right now, I guess, three sections, right? Your cerebrum, your cerebellum, and your brain stem. So your brain stem, right? And then your cerebellum is down here, right? That little fucking, please let me know if I'm wrong, but yeah, your cerebellum over there, you know what I mean? And then your cerebrum, that big fucking thing right there, your two parts, the cerebrum then subdivided into the two hemispheres, your left and your right hemisphere, right? The diencephalon, which is like, it's like, it looks like a little mini brain inside your brain, like this is the brain here. But the diencephalon, I think it just rests right above the brain stem. Again, don't fucking totally quote me on that. But it's cool. It's called the in-between brain, and it's, it's considered part then of the limbic system, right? Which the hypothalamus and the limbic system play such a big role in human emotions, emotions and drives that deal with the primary drives, right? Like the primary shit, basically, like eating and sex, or fucking anger and fear, right? The old limbic system. And it's the limbic system that, you know, sits on top of the brain stem, right? And the diencephalon is like just, it's kind of all part of that. It's, you got all these cool fucking little things, these horns and this little thing, and you know, I'm just rapping off the top of my head about this, but so the hypothalamus, right? Breaking down the hypothalamus, and the role that it plays in yeah, Jesus, really fun. Right. So I was breaking down the brain, right? The anatomy and physiology of the brain, right? And then the diencephalon, right? And so the diencephalon, the hypothalamus is kind of like within that little zone, right? So everything of importance in those first two circuits we're dealing with is like fucking down here, you know? And the hypothalamus, you know, they break down the diencephalon into four little, the diencephalon is then subdivided into four parts, right? Four divisions. And the hypothalamus is one of those parts of the diencephalon, right? And then, man, you can just keep breaking it down. The hypothalamus is itself then subdivided into three other parts, you know, the anterior, the tubular, and the posterior. So it's three little things all up in there, right? According to Wilson, then the first circuit activates and has a feedback loop going on with the hypothalamus and the immune system, right? And I mean, the immune system is such a major topic today, right? You know, don't need to get too much into it, other than breaking down very quickly, you know, what the immune system is about, right? And the immune system, according to, you know, this big old book here, you know, it's a college level textbook on immunobiology, you know, just describes the immune system, you know, having four functions, which is it detects threats to you, right? It contains whatever infection there is, and then it seeks to self-regulate, which is part of the healing process then from when you're infected, if you will. And then it protects your body against getting it again, right? So like how chicken pox, when you get chicken pox as a kid, you'll never get chicken pox ever again, et cetera, et cetera. You know, this all being part of the immune system, but the immune system being made up a lot by leukocytes, being white blood cells, right? And these leukocytes originate in bone marrow. So they're in your bone marrow. But when they leave the bone marrow, they go to the tissues and they circulate around your bloodstream. So bone marrow to blood, right? And then, which then coincides or it links in with your lymphatic system, which is another system of your body. And that drains, and so the lymph system, the lymphatic system, lymphs are little nodes, right, all over your little body, like they're little glands, and they all kind of just process, they pump out toxins as you know, that go through it. So blood intersects your blood system, your circulatory system intersects with the lymphatic system, right, and it helps pump out and drain toxins. You know, that was one thing I always remembered Ray Kurzweil wrote, saying like how to live longer. You should jump on a trampoline 5 minutes a day, right? Because that process kind of helps pump the lymph nodes. And when your lymphatic system is working well and pumping a lot of this stuff, it's basically detoxifying your body, right? And so what Wilson is essentially saying there, and here, this is a cool shot of the lymphatic system. So you see, they're all like those little pea-shaped nodes, right? And they play obviously a major part in healing and our immune system, and so many other systems. But just wanted to break that down and unpack that a little bit more, because you know, that was what Wilson inspired, you know, to try to just zero in as much as possible on the form and function, the anatomy and physiology of possible, the possible correlation between that and states of consciousness. It's just fun to do. I'm just doing the fucking knowledge. That's all. And thank you for joining along and and watching me do my jib jab arrow with this. You know what I mean? So this is just fun to look at. Study the hypothalamus, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm studying the hypothalamus, right? And I can't confirm or deny whether Wilson is right or wrong. I haven't read in neuroscience books anything that says exactly how Leary and Wilson described it, but that's not the point. It's the fact that Leary and Wilson inspired this in me in the first place to fucking go reading these textbooks full of all this different jargon, because you know what, once you get past the jargon, it really all just starts making sense, and it's just fun. It's just doing the knowledge, and in that knowledge you'll gain wisdom of yourself. You know what I mean? At least that's what I'm hoping, right? The second circuit, according to Wilson, then being the anal territorial, the emotional territorial circuit, is a feedback loop between your muscles, adrenaline, your thalamus, and your larynx and anus, right? Because I guess people shrivel up, right? If you're getting shouted on, or yelled at, and he's got a whole big breakdown of this in Prometheus Rising, right? But reading that about what Wilson is proposing in terms of that feedback loop, I just wanted to check out more about the thalamus, right? So it's a feedback loop between your muscles, your adrenaline. So in other words, your adrenal glands, right? Your thalamus and your larynx, right? So looking at my notes, thalamus, it's also part of the diencephalon, right? Your thalamus, right? Because you got your hypothalamus and then your thalamus. So they're obviously fucking very close to each other. The diencephalon, as I already said, it's all part of the limbic system. And the limbic system plays such a big part in regulating emotions. So there's a certain correlation there, right? So that Wilson and Leary, maybe before all this neuroscience, found this correlation then between emotions and the limbic system. I could be wrong. Maybe that was in scientific research pre 1973, but still they were correct, right? So that's something to be said about this 8-circuit, 8-system model of intelligence, is that there are correct correlations between their maps and a territory. Yeah, so like I said already, the limbic system, it's on top of the brain stem, right? And it deals with the primary drives and emotions, like fear, anger, everything around survival, right? Fear and anger, and sex and food. You know what I mean? And like Wilson said in Prometheus Rising, most people are just functioning off of their first 2 circuits, right? And if you really want to, one way, I'm not getting conspiratorial here, but it does kind of work. One way to keep people controlled is through fear and anger, right? And also food and sex, right? So what Wilson proposes in Prometheus Rising is that our society is oftentimes just stuck on the first 2 circuits. Most people are only functioning most of the time off of their first 2 circuits or systems, right? They have all these other systems within themselves, but they, for whatever reason, and there's sometimes some plenty good reasons, they're not able to function or give voice to or live within those other circuits or realms. So you're stuck looking for a survival shit, food, clothes, and shelter. You know what I mean? Like clean water, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're stuck in your limbic, experiencing the world through right here. You got all this other shit, especially your fucking cortex, your neocortex. You want to be neo. You got to exist in your neocortex, right? But we're stuck back here. You know what I mean? In the diencephalon. Everyone's dying. And that limbic system shit. And hey, ho, isn't this funny how these fucking silicone fucks figured out that they could, drive clicks through promoting fear and anger, right? And also sex and food. I mean, look at all the food porn on Instagram, and look at all the fucking just porn on fucking whatever internet shit. You know what I mean? Like titties and sandwiches, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that's all the limbic system, right? And that's the first two circuits of what we're dealing with. And I'm just having fun breaking this down, and I'm just happy that there are other people watching this shit right now. All right, like so. The let's see. I'll leave that there for now. The third system being the semantic system. The idea of there being a feedback loop between the this right here, the left part of the brain right here, cerebrum, right, that stuff right there, your verbal section. Now, I think one thing I found in where's the book, in books like this discussing the critical activation phase is I haven't really found any critical activation stuff around imprinting, territory or whatever, right? But the one thing I think I found is them talking about language, the thing. And so perhaps there is this moment then of where we imprint this capacity to utilize language or something, and you imprint it along a different spectrum. So more people are prone to process information through words, right? I'm one of those motherfuckers. You know what I mean? I'm fucking jib jabbing all the time when this thing is on or not. You know what I mean? I'm out there walking down the street, I'm jib jabbing at everyone. But hey, you need some, I'm jib jabbing. You know what I mean? Like, you see, right? But some people, they process through a lot of different things. Somatically, they process through feeling first, or they process through visually, or so maybe someone's a painter. You know what I mean? Like, I think I just happen to imprint some heavy semantics. You know what I mean? But that's pretty much it. Like, I'm not going to go too much into detail in exploring that. I do find it interesting, though. What I find interesting about how he's the map that he's trying to trace about the feedback loop in the semantic system is the left brain to your voice box, your larynx, to your right hand, to your eyes, right? So I haven't found any sort of correlation to that in any textbook neuroscience, but I'm not an expert. I'm open to learn. Maybe some of you guys know of studies that have looked at this. For the fourth circuit, the sociosexual system, feedback runs from the front brain, right, the cortex, neocortex, through hormones or your endocrine system, genitalia, breasts, and arms, right? So this is the sociosexual circuit, right? So I'm just mostly focused on the what's he speaking about in terms of the brain, right? In this, so the front brain, the neocortex, and language systems, in dealing with the interaction with hormones, your endocrine system, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to. I'm going to save this for another video, like breaking this down, because every circuit, I think, or system deserves its own jib jab. I'm going an hour and 13 minutes here, man. Talking wild. So Wilson and Leary, it's the 8 system model of intelligence. There's 4 other systems of the body, or circuits of the body, that are emergent, what Leary said and Wilson said. So we all have them within ourselves, but for the most part, society does not encourage the development of these systems or circuits. Although throughout history, there have been people who have developed, each of these four emergent systems or circuits to varying degrees, right? And of course, they were creating a map. A map creates some kind of order out of the chaos. This is just one map to describe these things, but it's it's helpful, right? But knowing that these are not the only descriptions that hold weight or merit when dealing with these same, I guess, levels of consciousness that aspects of yoga or Ayurvedic medicine, have looked at, right? And other systems besides the Western medicine or the allopathic approach to medicine, right? Um, you know, so the fifth circuit or system is what Wilson and Leary call the neurosomatic system or circuit, or the hedonist system or circuit, right? So the neurosomatic system is this part of yourself that you're able to access, and it can actually, when you are able to tap this part, right, and open it or whatever, and you know how to utilize it, you could actually spontaneously heal other parts of your psyche or whatever, right? So uh like, let's say, basically you can reduce anxiety. That's pretty much the safest way to say this, right? You can reduce uh proneness to depression, things like that. Is it going to kill the accessing your neurosomatic circuit? Will it heal yourself of some fucking terminal disease or infection? I'm not, no. Get a fucking vaccine. All right, like, get some medicine. I'm not saying this. um what I want to comment on in relation to this book, Quantum Psychology, is that when Wilson wrote Prometheus Rising, and was published in 1983, when speaking about the neurosomatic circuit, uh, there wasn't really any research or scientific studies being published regularly about this capacity of humans to access this other part of themselves that could have a beneficial effect on the whole, their whole body minds, right? What they drew on was metaphors, say, presented through yoga and different types of meditation or whatever. So that what Wilson says about the neurosomatic circuit in quantum psychology is that different yogis have been able to access this part of themselves to help all their other previous circuits function maybe a little bit smoother or whatever. And of course, Leary said that LSD could be used to re-imprint and access your neurosomatic self, as well as Leary also believed you could access all 8 systems or circuits through the use of LSD, in a healing psychological framework or whatever. But for today, I just want to speak about the neurosomatic circuit system, and I'll leave it at that, because what I think is really cool about quantum psychology, it's Wilson's update to that system, to the understanding of the fifth circuit, right? The neurosomatic circuit. And that is the work that was done up until the 1980s and continued today, but breakthroughs in understanding that was represented in a book that he talks about in quantum psychology, this book called The Psychobiology of Mind-Body Healing by Ernest Rossi. And Rossi this is a very interesting book Very fun book to read. Rossi trained with a hypnotherapist named Milton Erickson, who was like a legendary hypnotherapist. And Rossi was one of his students, and written a lot of really interesting books. And Wilson references this book, Psychobiology and Mind Body Healing, a lot in quantum psychology for a number of reasons. But just for this particular jib jab, I'm going to talk way more about this book and also quantum psychology. What Rossi proposed or put out or drew attention to, where the research was going by the 80s, was the idea of the neuropeptide system. Yeah. Okay. So basically, the neuropeptide system is we have these things called neuropeptides, which are so they're peptides, which are proteins that are in our brains, right, where they think they might have originated or whatever. But neuropeptides also move through our bodies, right? So neuropeptides are neurotransmitters, right? But they're also hormones. So you have these things within us that move through the body mind seemingly freely, that help every other system in our body, right? The neuropeptide system. See if I have something really cool underlined. All right, whatever. I'll talk more about it in another jib jab. Essentially, what Wilson is saying though is that the neurosomatic circuit or system is basically, and I don't know why he doesn't just say it like this, is pretty much the neuropeptide system. Because what researchers found up until the 80s there was that the neuropeptide system actually runs along every other system that we have, right? Our immune system, our nervous system. The neuropeptide system is already there. And what Rossi says is that researchers found that the neuropeptide system actually predated, in this form of humanity, right? Predated all the other systems. So the neuropeptide system is like the system of like a fucking one-celled organism, right? Or any sentient being. Plants have this sort of neuropeptide system. We have this connection, these connecting systems through our body that connect everything, right? And this is the neuropeptide system, right? And when we are able to visualize and access the flow, if you will, of these different neuropeptides, and I'll break this all down in another video, what are specific neuropeptides, etc. But again, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not a fucking doctor. I'm a guy who smokes a lot of weed and reads a lot of books, all right? Instagram, don't take my shit down. But the neuropeptide system being this sort of system that's already there, right? And hormones and neurotransmitters move, through this neuropeptide system throughout our body, and actually help the body function better, the mind function better in different ways, right? And it doesn't necessarily change things. It just rearranges a certain fucking perspective kind of within the body mind itself. And I'll just leave it at that right now. They're very interesting, biological phenomenon, neuropeptides. And what basically, this book is about is what he calls mind modulation, what Rossi calls mind modulation, which is basically hypnosis and learning self-hypnosis, how to kind of help your access your neuropeptide system more efficiently, perhaps. And I'll leave it at that. Other than what I'll say is this book and other things really influenced Wilson during the 80s, because Robert Anton Wilson during the 1980s really got into studying self-hypnosis. He read a lot of Milton Erickson. He listened to Milton Erickson's daughter made self-hypnosis tapes. Wilson was studying all this stuff. And I think a lot of the his insights from those studies were reflected in this book, Quantum Psychology, which again I highly recommend. It's a fun read, and I don't know if you're like me, if you like breaking things down, to the nitty gritty and see what it's about. It's a lot of fun, because that's what I like about Leary and Wilson, is they are applying that classical understanding to gaining knowledge of yourself and gaining knowledge of the world, and knowing the difference between abstract knowledge, right, and fully existential functional knowledge. So I agree with this. I think it's just as important to know how to change the brakes on your car as it is to know where your diencephalon is and how your neuropeptide system works. And I'll leave it on this note, with what they found, what Rossi said researchers found about the neuropeptide system versus the central nervous system. Signals from the central nervous system happen extremely quickly, right? And other systems within our body, the signals move very, very quickly. The neuropeptide system signals move slower, much slower, right? But what Rossi and then Wilson agreed occurs is the action still occurs, right? There's a lot more to be said on that. I know I was kind of vague about breaking down the neuropeptide system, but that's just something I wanted to add on and elucidate. I think that studying the neuropeptide system gives you a lot of insight into what Wilson and Leary were saying about their fifth circuit or system, the neurosomatic system. And Wilson said in quantum psychology that when researchers and scientists start figuring this out, we're going to achieve a place of scientific yoga, right? I think what he means by that really is that he agreed with John Lilly, another fucking great, pioneer of consciousness study, who also John Lilly was a neuroscientist who loved Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras, right? He was a big fan of the Yoga Sutras and the yogic perspective. And John Lilly said that what is it? Science is the yoga of the West, and yoga is the science of the East, right? And of course, since the 70s, there's been an increased amount of research and seeking to understand, the ideas and the neuropsychological effect of yoga. But what Wilson is proposing is going beyond yoga itself, and he's also proposing going beyond a basic materialist psychological understanding of self too, and a certain fusion, like a lot of people said. But he said it in his own way, which is really cool. Which obviously I really agreed with. But to stay hip to this knowledge, that to stay on the lookout for an increased understanding and knowledge of the role that the neuropeptide system plays in regulating our mood and consciousness, and even right down to our immune system. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to explore, and that's what I was doing now in this jib jab hour, jim jab 90 minutes. Thank you everyone who watched, and thank you to the rest who are going to watch this. I got more to say. Again, Quantum Psychology, one of my favorite books from Robert Anton Wilson, and there's a lot more to break down. So I'll leave it on that. Peace.